Republican instead.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
The women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions.
On January 6th of 2021, you had tens of thousands of people peacefully protesting.
So, it's not a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's not QAnon. It's real.
My guest today on the enemies list is Brian Stelter. Brian is a former CNN host of Reliable Sources. He is one of the smartest media analysts in the country, and he has a terrific new book called Network of Lies, the Epic Saga of Fox News, Donald Trump, and the Battle for American Democracy. We're so happy to have him on the enemies list today because this is a subject that a lot of our listeners are fascinated by. The role Fox plays in our political climate and our political culture in America. And Brian, there is no one better to talk about this. So thank you, my friend, so much for coming on the show today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm proud to be on the list.
Well, let's start out with this with the big picture question. You covered Fox as a media analyst for a very long time. You understand them, I think, better than almost anybody else out there. Talk to me about the origin story of writing this book, because we are in a really interesting inflection point about where Fox is in America and where America has been shaped by Fox. So talk to us about how you decided to do this topic and what the process of doing this book was like.
Right. Well, thank you. Well, number one, I have been blogging and writing about cable news for 20 years, and I feel like I have witnessed Fox News completely transform in that time in a way that CNN has not, in a way that MSNBC has not.
Right.
Programs come and go, hosts come and go, but Fox as an entity has radicalized in a way that we have to grapple with, we have to reckon with, because it's the same thing that's happening to the GOP as a party. Fox and the GOP are going through this process together. Fox is making it worse. Fox is making it more intense. And frankly, I feel like I wrote my previous book too soon. So I wrote this book called Hoax in 2020. It was during COVID. It was exploring Trump's twisted relationship with Fox, and specifically how I made the argument that Fox hurt Trump's presidency. Fox wounded him. They misinformed him, sent him off posting angry, inaccurate tweets, and actually doomed his reelection campaign. So that was in 2020, and I had to rely mostly on anonymous sources, as most of these books do. Especially in media, for whatever reason, people are afraid to go on the record. They hide behind anonymity, and that was good. And so I had a lot of good material in there, but it was mostly anonymous. And then Dominion happens. Dominion sues Fox over the big lie. And all of those emails and text messages started to come out in the public view. And I felt like my sources were now on the record. All of those anonymous quotes were now on the record.
To be or not.
Yes, it's incredible. I've never seen it happen to a major media company to be exposed like this. So that's why I felt like I had to write this new book, in part because, and I'm sure you can appreciate this, Rick, just because something's in the public record doesn't mean it's really public, doesn't mean it's easy to find.
Right.
A lot of the filings in Wilmington, Delaware, they're kind of hidden away. I have this giant 2 gigabyte PDF on my computer now of like 10,000 pages of the best emails and texts, but and I had to make it keyword searchable and all that as kind of to make this book happen. But the point is, when the filings hit, and there's a lot of press coverage in February and March. Oh my gosh, Tucker Carlson says he hates Trump. Oh my gosh, this and that. But those were just the tip of the iceberg. There was so much more underneath, and that's why I thought it was important to put it into a book, because otherwise, this stuff will never really see the light of day.
So talk a little bit about where Fox is in the 2023 election first. I want to go through some of the nuts and bolts in the book, but I want to talk about, Rupert has now, after 4,719 years at Fox, stepped back from the immediate day-to-day, hands-on, every second of the day management. Talk to us a little bit about how much he's still sort of a ghost in that machine, and about how Lachlan Murdoch and Fox's management is going to operate in the 2024 election as Donald Trump comes back onto center stage and becomes the nominee for a third time.
Yeah, this move by Rupert, I describe it as semi-retirement, and that's what his aides describe it. Sometimes behind his back as well. It's semi-retirement. He's still a presence. He's still a force, and Lachlan's going out of his way to emphasize that. But it is significant that as of November 17th, at Fox
Right.
Corporation, Lachlan is the sole chairman. He's the sole boss, at least on paper. And if anything, Lachlan is Trumpier than Rupert. We know that Rupert privately detests Trump, even though publicly he's allowed so much of this to go on. I have a quote in the book from someone saying, from a Murdoch family friend saying, Rupert hates Trump. He can't believe we're going to end up with Trump as the nominee again. There's also an interesting scene involving Trump and Rupert's last phone call in 2020, when Trump says, "You're 90% good," meaning Fox, "You're 90% good. I need you to be 100% good." And Rupert says, "You can't have that." Now, that might be Rupert's imagination of what he thinks the relationship is, but it's an interesting bit of dialogue that he has claimed happened. And I think with Lachlan, Fox might be 100% good. I mean, there's less interest from Lachlan in, trying to stop anti-democratic conduct. Lachlan Murdoch cares about making sure political ad spending at his station stays high. He is about keeping the profits flowing above all else.
That's something that I think is an underappreciated thing. It's not that Lachlan is going to come in as this sort of younger generation, more Gen X inflected leader. He grew up. I mean, Rupert grew up at least in the tabloid journalism culture 70 years ago or 60 years ago, whatever. And there was at least some journalism in the tabloid part, sometimes here and there.
That's
and he
right.
monetized it brilliantly, and he made it. But Lachlan grew up politically. I mean, I knew Lachlan slightly back in the early 2000s, like very slightly, sort of same circles of some political people and whatnot. But he's, from what I'm hearing, he's like more of a believer in this sort of oppositional, defiant, disorder journalistic, or at least media world than Rupert even was.
More of a contrarian, even more of a contrarian who wants to stick it to whoever he thinks is the establishment, even though, of course, he's the one with the, $50 million, actually, no, much more than $50 million mansion in Bel Air. He spends a lot of his time in Australia, and I describe him in the book as a kind of absentee landlord, or at least somebody who has to hire a property manager to make sure things are okay several time zones away. And, another way to analogize that is the famous quote from Succession about the pain sponge. They have a pain sponge. That's what Lachlan and Rupert have. They have a pain sponge. Suzanne Scott, the head of Fox News Media, soaks up the pain. She does all of that, that stuff that they don't have to deal with, including, calling up Tucker Carlson and saying, "Tucker, your show is canceled." It was Lachlan who decided. He told his father, but then Suzanne, the pain sponge, has to deal with the fallout. And so I think in that way, he's removed, from a lot of this in a way that is maybe not advantageous to the general public or the viewers.
That's something that, I mean, particularly since the shuffling off of this mortal coil of Roger Ailes, that I don't think a lot of people have processed as much. There's a sort of shorthand. Oh, Rupert, but Rupert's not in there changing copy in the teleprompter, but they have built, and Suzanne Scott really leads that internal managerial culture at Fox. Talk to us a little bit about that, like the types of people, the brain room, all the sort of like the internal. It almost seems like it's like a little it reminds me of like Soviet era propagandists, all like everybody has to keep in line and nobody wants to be ratted out as being insufficiently eager for the faithful.
I think that's exactly what we see through the Dominion document dump. There's this trove of documents. We see examples of producers saying things like this. One of Hannity's producers saying 2 or 3 weeks after Biden's been projected to be president-elect, one of Hannity's producers saying, "Our best minutes last week were on the voting irregularities. So our best minute-by-minute ratings, our highest minute-by-minute ratings were about the big lie." Now, I worked at CNN for almost a decade. I never saw minute-by-minute ratings for my program. I didn't need to. I didn't feel so obsessed or panicked about losing the audience. I didn't feel so desperate to study the minute by minute to see whether Rick Wilson, was rating well enough as a guest. Come on, But it shows how the place was operating, at least in 2020. I think it is still how it operates today, based on my sourcing. the obsession with keeping those viewers hooked, addicted at all costs was so much more intense than I ever experienced at CNN, that I've ever heard about at a place like MSNBC. So I think that's a big part of the story, that in some ways the viewers are in charge, right? That the viewers are the ones that are in charge based on their viewership.
Right.
I had let me just pull up the quote that I really liked. Where was it? I had a Trump White House veteran tell me of Fox. They said they are servants. They simply serve the audience. They're only going to do whatever they think is going to keep that. And I just think that feedback loop is a really damaging feedback loop, and it's crucial to this story. And then the other part is what you said about the brain room. Fox has had historically these researchers, these fact checkers, these people who will vet a script ahead of time, make sure that it's not totally off the rails or outside the bounds of reality. Fox has I don't want to say dismantled. Fox has minimized the brain room. They've laid off some of those staffers in recent years. They've made move after move after move away from the news side and toward more and more propaganda. And that's why there are fewer and fewer respected correspondents at Fox.
Sure.
Trey Yingst has rightly received a lot of credit for his war coverage in Israel. There are DC correspondents who I think are highly respected. But there was moments in 2020 that show what the company really wants. There was an anchor named Eric Shawn who did a fact check of a Trump of some Trump lies in 2020, and then Suzanne Scott, the head of Fox News, emails saying this is bad for business. This has to stop happening. The fact checking has to stop happening. And so when that comes out, especially when it comes out publicly this year, and it sends a message, right? It sends a message to the staff about what the incentives are and what the incentives are not.
So the big thing that led you to be able to peer into Fox's inner sanctum with more clarity than anybody ever has is the all these documents in the Dominion voting trial. Now they're facing another massive trial based on the same predicates and the same legal challenge with Smartmatic. Do you think that Fox learned any lessons from paying nearly $1 billion to Dominion, and when they will almost certainly have to pay more than that in the Smartmatic case? Do you think they learned any lessons, or did they just absorb that as a cost of doing business?
I excuse me. The cost of doing business. That's so sad, but real, to hear out loud. I quote our disinformation researcher in the book saying, Fox just had to pay a lying tax. It's the cost of lies, is they had to pay this tax to Dominion. So there's definitely a way to view it that way. Smartmatic, the lawyer, J. Eric Connolly, who is working on the depositions, he is pressing forward. He says to me, Smartmatic is a global company that was injured on a global scale. He claims the damages should be even bigger than Dominion's. Dominion wanted $1.6 billion, ended up with almost $800 million, so almost half of what it wanted.
Right.
Smartmatic wants $2.6 billion. Right now, there's no interest in Smartmatic in settling because they want to get all of these anchors and stars under oath first. They get, as one source said, a second bite of the apple. They get to look at the Dominion depositions and then try to ask other questions and get even more information out of Fox. So from a let's see what happened inside Fox point of view, there's even more to come. I think within Fox there have been some changes around the edges. To your question, has anything changed? Have they reassessed? I think one significant change is that Donald Trump no longer is interviewed live. It sounds almost silly to say out loud, but they only pre-tape interviews with the former president because they can't trust him about what he's going to say on their airwaves. They also, and this was a couple of years ago, they started to say you can't call in anymore, whether it's a pre-tape or live. We're not going to take you on the phone anymore. You're going to be on camera. You can't be in your pajamas at Mar-a-Lago. So those changes, again, relatively minor, but they are real, and I think they are lasting. But beyond that, here's what hasn't happened. They have not instituted a standards and practices department full of experts and lawyers and editors. At CNN, there's something called the triad. It's this multi-part, review process, especially for sensitive stories, but even for your standard breaking news coverage. There's a lot of different editors and standards people involved. There's no version of that at Fox, and even after Dominion, there has not been the establishment of that.
It's fascinating to me and look, Fox. What are the economics of Fox? I mean, right now, what are they? A company that can easily shrug off a $1 billion lying tax. What are the economics of Fox looking like right now? They're built on the carriage fee, not really on selling advertising anymore. So they're sort of almost immune to market pressures from people say I don't want to watch, I don't want to buy the product sold on Fox. Okay, they're like, screw yourself. We get paid because we have a certain number of cable households watching us, right?
Right. It's a beautiful business model. And all of the struggles in streaming right now, the headlines about Peacock and Disney Plus and all of this tension about the streaming marketplace,
Right.
it's because streaming's not as great a business as the old-fashioned cable business. The cable bundle, the word bundle, right? Getting it all together in one package. It wasn't as perfect for the consumer, but it was perfect for the Murdochs. It was perfect for these media moguls. And now they're unbundling it to some degree and suffering the consequences. But because Fox News is still a key part of the bundle, because there are, a significant minority number of households that insist on having it no matter what and would cancel cable without it,
Right.
Fox still has significant pricing power. I'll tell you something that hasn't been reported yet. Fox was out there in the marketplace this year trying to renew its cable contracts with the likes of Comcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I say in the book, they wanted $3 a month for Fox News. We don't know where they actually ended up. It might have been $2.50. It might have been somewhere in that range. But they have finished all those contracts, and they were able to finish those contracts this year without a blackout, without a public fight. Earlier this year, Disney went off the air with Spectrum households. Oftentimes there's these blackouts and these big battles. Fox News didn't have to do that. Fox Core didn't have to do that, because between news and sports, they do have a lot of power in the marketplace. Now, here's what the challenge is. The average viewer of Fox News, the median age is 69 years old, and young people who start households now don't subscribe to cable. They just get Netflix and Disney Plus.
That's right.
So the business is definitely in decline. Everybody knows it. Lachlan Murdoch knows it, but I think he's managing the decline. I quote an insider in the book saying he is minimizing headaches by firing Tucker, and he's maximizing profits, and just kind of managing it down for the time being.
Right. So you mentioned Tucker. That was my next question. Tell us a little bit about the rise and absolute swift fall of Tucker Carlson inside the Fox universe.
Yeah. That saying, fake it till you make it. That's what I was told when I was like a 21-year-old kid at the New York Times that didn't belong there. The editor just said, fake it till you make it. Tucker did a version of that on a much grander scale. He went into Fox. He acted untouchable. He created this impression that he was invincible, this impression that he was unstoppable and unfireable. And everybody believed it. I mean, I believed it. Media reporters ate this up, this idea that he was tight with Lachlan Murdoch. And I just want to be clear. Yes, they did have dinners. Yes, they did have a relationship.
Sure.
But they were not friends. They were not bros the way that Tucker and his allies portrayed it. You can see it under oath with Dominion. Both men say they rarely spoke with each other. So I think Tucker went out very wisely, because he had been fired from CNN and fired from MSNBC.
Fired from MSNBC.
He was like, okay, I've got one more cable news chance, right? And he was stuck on Fox and Friends Weekend doing stunts for years away from his family. He was miserable. So when he actually got a show he wanted, a primetime show, he created this sense that he was irreplaceable. And it helped that he was high rated. But I think he was never as untouchable as people perceived. He was always more vulnerable than we thought. Why? Because advertisers didn't want to be anywhere near him, because he was a pain in the ass to management, because he mistreated people internally, calling executives the C word, all that stuff that, any one of those items that I list, I have like a list of like 20 items in the book. Any one of those items could get you bounced at any given time. What's remarkable is that the Murdochs put up with him for so long, and then finally decide not to. And I think, Dominion is a factor in this, not because Dominion, he's out there saying that Dominion forced them to fire him. It's crazy. Tucker literally said on the record, I was fired. Dominion, it was a condition of the Dominion settlement.
He has claimed that. And he actually claimed that to a mutual acquaintance of ours. He held the line on it, and our mutual acquaintance said, that's not true. That's not true, right? You know you're not on TV. You You don't have to lie anymore about it. You know you're not there anymore. You know?
Right.
It's like,
It's
what?
really been it's been a little it's driven me a little batty because I've walked all the way around this story and tried to talk to
Mhm.
every lawyer involved. Like I feel like I was almost in the room for these negotiations. Tucker's name didn't come up. I mean, if anything, Dominion liked Tucker. They wanted him as a witness because they thought he was going to help their case. He was out
Sure.
there bashing Sidney Powell. He was good for Dominion.
Mhm.
So anyway, he's out there saying that. Here's the thing about Dominion though that is real. Dominion brought up his demons and they put his demons in the face of the Fox board because
Oh,
the
yeah.
Fox board of directors right before the settlement they went through and they were like, what are these text messages from Tucker, these ugly text messages. So I do think that was a factor because it forced a conversation about his behavior and about his conduct and
Right.
ultimately led to his cancellation. And now he's out there in those brave waters of independent media. uh, it's interesting to me because Fox News is, as we just said, a declining business. It was better to be Fox News 10 years ago than it is today, even though I would just say they are still a monopoly. They're still incredibly powerful.
Oh
I don't
God.
I don't
Yeah.
buy this junk about like it's the death of Fox News. No, no, no. That's liberal wishful thinking. But there are all of these independent challengers, all these Fox wannabes out there, and Tucker's going to be another one of them. So bit by bit, it is an interesting
Mhm.
media marketplace on the far right.
I mean, and Tucker's pulling off numbers on Twitter and on his own streaming idea that, at basically zero cost, at essentially no cost at all.
Right.
So let's even say he's making, you know, let's say it's costing him $1 million a year to produce what he's doing. He's still making a very fine living. He's all right. He's not going to miss a mortgage payment, folks. Um, so when they fired him, um, tell us about like the TikTok on it, like the moment, the day Tucker got got the axe from Suzanne Scott, and
Right.
how Fox internally sort of had to, go to the mattresses and be ready to do sort of the usual sort of Arena Briganti press pushback on Tucker because people inside Fox, they're afraid of their own PR department. The talent is afraid of the Fox PR department, and kind of rightly so. Correct?
I think that is true to some degree. Yes, um, yes, I think that's true. But maybe you know more about that than I.
But when Tucker got fired, they sort of they knew this was going to be a kind of a big PR moment for them, a big sort of that there would be a backlash from the right and from a lot of their core audience. Yes.
Yes, I think that's true. And there was, it's true that the ratings dropped. The ratings tanked the minute this news broke. In fact, I looked at the spreadsheet for Newsmax. Hour by hour, Newsmax gained that day as Fox suffered. Now, as
Right.
always, the audience has come back to Fox. Newsmax has receded. It is
Hmm.
nowhere near a threat to Fox in a real way.
Yeah.
But at that moment in April, it was very intense. I report that Suzanne Scott called Tucker, told him the show was canceled. There was not going to be a final episode. He was not going to sign off on the air. But she did
Mhm.
offer him one thing. She did say, you can put out a statement in the press release. You can say this was mutual. You can play this like you wanted to leave. And I report that for a moment he thought about doing that.
Mhm.
He thought about playing nice, playing along. And then he decided absolutely not. No, I was fired and I want the world to know. And I think he's been on a revenge tour ever since.
Oh
But if
yeah.
you look at the language in the press release, it sounds like they wanted him to play along. In fact,
Hmm.
on the air that morning, they even said this was mutual when it wasn't. Like someone loaded the wrong
Right.
word into
Right.
the
Right.
teleprompter. So that shows this happened pretty suddenly. Once the order came down from Lachlan, it was sudden. And then Suzanne the Pain Sponge Scott had to put it into place. They didn't have a replacement show. They didn't know what to do. What they did know was that Tucker's staff was more loyal to him than to the network. And so this wasn't going to last in the
Sure.
long term to have these staffers still at the network. And, I
Right.
feel like in some ways they were a sabotage squad kind of playing pranks until they were laid off in July. I hate to see people lose their jobs, but it
Sure.
was clear that they were not loyal to Fox. They were loyal to Tucker.
So what were they doing internally?
Well, remember that banner that aired on the screen one night, like "What wannabe dictator?" It was referring
Oh
to Joe
right.
Biden. There were moments like that where it just felt like they knew that their days were numbered anyway.
Right. Blaze of glory.
And of course, ever since, Fox has remained silent about why this all happened. You mentioned Irene Briganti. Tucker has accused the PR team there of leaking. I just know that personally, when I was asking questions, they weren't helping me. So, maybe they helped others. They didn't help me.
Right,
So
right.
Fox has been in a tough spot because they decided to cancel the show, but they didn't say why. And this has really been a problem for Dominion. So I was talking to Dominion lawyer Davita Brooke, who has been so frustrated by Tucker's conspiracy theory that it was all Dominion's fault. You know what she said to me? She said, look, Brian, there is one group of people in the world that knows why Tucker was fired. And it's Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch. It's the Murdochs. They know why this happened. They chose to keep it a secret, probably for boring legal and contractual reasons. But as a result, there's been all these conspiracy theories that have festered, which kind of feels perfectly on the nose, right? That there's all these conspiracy theories about the conspiracy theorist.
I love it. So, folks, Brian, I'm going to ask you one more question, but folks, the book is Network of Lies, the Epic Saga of Fox News, Donald Trump, and the Battle for American Democracy. It is an absolutely terrific x-ray into the weird, twisted world of Fox, and I highly recommend it. So, Brian, the big question here that a lot of people, when I told some folks I was asking about, I was going to interview you on this, they were saying, like, make sure you find out how you think they'll treat Trump when the election really gets rolling. I mean, you've mentioned some of the restrictions they work around on Trump now. Are we going to go back to the coverage model Fox had in 16 and 20, which was nonstop Trump 24/7? Do they want that? Are they going to do it that way? I mean, where do you see the future coverage? Because honestly, they really have a gigantic role in shaping American politics, and I'm curious where you think it's going to end up in 2024 as they roll into the inevitability that Trump will be the nominee.
I think the tug of war inside Fox is very real. And even though it can feel like only one side ever wins in that tug of war, and that it's always the Trump side, it's always the MAGA side, the tug of war is real, and it shouldn't be discounted, because there are some people at Fox that are capable of shame, that are capable of regret, that look back and say, some of the reactions in 2020, some of the ways we panicked about the viewers upset about Biden winning, some of the ways that we responded were embarrassing. We don't want that to happen again. So there is some of that that's real. There's also one other X factor, and that is the head of the decision desk, Arnon Mishkin, who made the call in 2020. He'll be back for 2024. So we know that there's a professional who's going to be holding the wheel on election night 2024.
Right.
And that's something. But even if you have real, reliable reporters who are trying in that tug of war, the MAGA propaganda overwhelms everything. And that's the story of 2020 with Fox and the Big Lie. Fox told the truth, then started getting shouted at, started to whisper the truth, and all the stars of Kennedy started to shout the lie. And I fear and I suspect that'll be what we see again. That there will be a small contingent that tries to point out what's going on, tries to drag Fox toward reality, and a larger, louder group of Maria Bartiromos and Laura Ingrams, who, even if they have personal dislike and disregard for Trump the way that Laura Ingraham does, she's quoted in the book saying he's always obsessed with a grievance loop all about him, right? She knows what Trump is.
She's not wrong.
but she will, she also knows, what she has to do. And so that those louder voices, I think, will probably prevail. But I will say, there was something interesting that happened the other night when President Biden had a primetime address about the Middle East. It was during the 8 p.m. hour. And back when Tucker was in control of the 8 p.m. hour, he liked to flaunt that he didn't show the president live. Like Biden would give a primetime speech. Tucker would in your face, we are not going to show that to you. Like he was very proud of it.
Right.
I noticed that when Biden gave his primetime speech about Israel and Gaza, Brett Baer and Martha McCallum were the anchors. It was the news side, what they consider the news side. Yeah, and they actually showed the speech. And I know that sounds like, oh, well, that's like the least you can do. Well, yes, it is the least you can do. It's just the basics of being a news network, but it's a change.
Call me crazy.
But it's a change. And I'm just watching for those moments of change to see, is Fox are they going to let the word news really be in the name or not?
I think it's a fascinating question, and I am so grateful for you coming on the show today, Brian, because this is an absolutely vital moment and a vital element in how whether our democracy sort of survives and whether the republic survives, because Fox has had its thumb on the scale a lot of different times in a lot of different ways, and
Yeah.
And it's certainly going to be a question that we're going to have to look at in 2024. Folks, once again, the book is Network of Lies by Brian Stelter. It is the epic saga of Fox News, Donald Trump, and the battle for American democracy. No Labels back as a returning guest on the shit list, on the enemies list. No Labels is out right now, telling a bunch of brand new elaborate lies about what they're doing in this election. And they're telling people, oh, Mitt Romney will join our ticket. You are lying, and you know it. Mitt Romney has already put out a statement, and yet No Labels is still persisting in lying about Mitt Romney being on the No Labels ticket. Mitt Romney's not going to be on the No Labels ticket. Folks, No Labels is flailing right now. They are in a panic. Suddenly, they've got a primary between Joe Manchin and Larry Hogan. It's like the Oscar Wilde phrase about fox hunting. It's the unspeakable in pursuit of the inedible. These people are the most mendacious players in American politics today, and I include Donald Trump on that list. Okay? They are truly spectacularly deceptive at every political level. I think I've certainly had enough of their garbage. I know a lot of Americans have too. They now are trying, get this, the No Labels people who say that, oh, we're about democracy. We're about more voices in the political process. People are trying to run on the No Labels ballot line in Arizona. And No Labels is saying, no, you can't. You're not allowed to compete. You're not allowed to run because we want to pick the candidates who run on our ticket. They don't want primaries. They don't want democracy. They want to hand select people, just like their presidential candidate. They're going to secretly select the candidate for president at a secret meeting in Dallas with their donors, not with the voters. It's an astoundingly corrupt and mendacious group. I encourage all of you to hold them to account. And they are, in fact, going to remain pretty much at the top of my enemies list.